to go back and look at Martin Luther King. This is in 1963 in Selma, and so you're going to watch a little video here, and you know, I hope you really think about just, you know, who is controlling us and wanting to keep people from, you know, having freedom. You know, why were they so afraid to let black people have the same rights as us? Why? And I want to say, I think Martin Luther King is a saint, and I actually am very inspired by him, and I read a lot of his things. So I hope you enjoy the next clip.
The president referred to the events in Selma as an American tragedy. And throughout the nation, even in Canada, there were marches through the streets of towns and cities. In New York's Harlem, more than 15,000, half of them white, filed somberly through the streets in quiet but agonized protest. The events in Selma had been brought to a climax by a nighttime attack on a white Boston minister by white men. He died 2 days later, many feeling he suffered martyrdom in the cause of civil rights and voting discrimination. The next day, 4 men were held for his murder. For the Reverend James J. Reeb, the demonstrators write his epitaph with this tribute. Selma sprang overnight from an obscure southern town to the front pages of world newspapers. This church was headquarters in the Negro Drive for the right to vote, and it was here that Martin Luther King came to lend his support to the campaign.
I'm here to tell you tonight that the businessmen, the mayor of this city, the police commissioner of this city, and everybody in the white power structure of this city must take a responsibility for everything that Jim Clark does in this community. It's time for us to say to these men that if you don't do something about it, we will have no alternative but to engage in broader and more drastic forms of civil disobedience in order to bring the attention of the nation to this whole issue in Selma, Alabama. He was murdered by the irresponsibility of every politician from governors on down who has fed his constituents the stale bread of hatred and the spoiled meat of racism. He was murdered by the timidity of a federal government that can spend millions of dollars a day to keep troops in South Vietnam and cannot protect the lives of its own citizens seeking the right to vote.
It'll be detrimental to your safety to continue this march, and I'm saying that this is an unlawful assembly. You have to disperse. You are ordered to disperse, go home, or go to your church. This march will not continue. Is that clear to you? I've got nothing further to say to you.
We have no alternative but to keep moving with determination. We've gone too far now to turn back. And in a real sense, we are moving and we cannot afford to stop because Alabama and because our nation has a date with destiny.
Isn't that amazing that our own Americans would do that to fellow Americans? And of course, you know, that was the crisis in '63. I think the crisis now is well, we have a lot of them, but the main one, I believe, is this greed out of control, where, you know, people think that it doesn't matter, you know, how you make the money, or they do the doctrine of relative filth. I'm not so bad because that CEO's worse, or, you know, we're not so bad because if we're not in that country, they will be. That whole thing. I'm going to read one of Martin Luther King's greatest quotes, I think. Sooner or later, all the people of the world will have to discover a way to live together in peace. If this is to be achieved, man must evolve for all human conflict a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. I don't know why that's choking me up. The foundation of such a method is love. And see, that's one of the things. Like today, getting, you know, like I don't want to be like pointing my finger, you know, everyone is doing the best they can.